Okay, so this morning I will be sharing with you some approaches for evaluating project impact. When we implement projects, it's usually not because we have money to spend, but because we have problems to solve. And so this must be a guiding principle for the design, implementation, and evaluation of projects. So how do we know that the project we have implemented has made a difference? We need to do an assessment. All right, so there is a specialized field called evaluation. When we evaluate, we look for answers to different types of questions. Some questions will be around whether the project was relevant. That is to say, is it the right thing to do with the scarce resources we have? We also want to find out whether the project was cost effective. Okay, could it have been cheaper? Was it, so efficiency is also about whether we could have done it faster and even also cheaper. And then we are also interested in whether the project is sustainable. So will the benefits of the project continue over a long period of time? And then finally, we are also interested in knowing whether the project has had an impact. That is to say, has there been a widespread improvement in society, in the community as a result of that project? So we'll try and answer two questions. What is impact evaluation? And why is impact evaluation valuable? All right. So let me just start with some impact evaluation questions. Usually, policymakers have questions on their minds in terms of whether they are doing the right things. Okay, so we could start with these policy questions. How do we ensure road network is accessible all year round? Because this might be the thinking of the minister, or maybe the president. All right, and then there could be another question like, how do we increase pedestrian safety, especially when we've had reported cases of fatalities on our roads involving pedestrians? And then how do we reduce vehicle transit time? So for ordinary citizens and of course, policymakers, these are the questions they have on their minds. Now, we as technocrats or even researchers, ours is to come up with solutions to these questions. They don't have the answers, but we should. Okay, so let's assume we have proposed some solutions to these three policy questions above. So we are saying, for example, the question on how do we ensure road network is accessible all year round? A possible solution will be output and performance-based road contracts. Okay, there could be other possible solutions, but assuming this is what we feel can be a good solution. Then we come to how do we increase pedestrian safety? You could have a solution like installation of footbridges. And how do we reduce vehicle transit time? The proposed solution is road improvement programs. Okay, so at the end of the day, the question we also want to answer is, did the program have an impact? Okay, did the introduction of output and performance-based road contract improve road condition mix? And did the installation of footbridges increase pedestrian safety? And did the road improvement program reduce vehicle transit time? So these are policy questions which our implementation of the various programs should be able to address. Now, we don't know whether the solutions we propose work or did not work. That is why we need to do this evaluation to get answers to these policy questions. So impact evaluation tries to measure the cause and effect relationship between the intervention and the results. So let's say the first case, the intervention is output-based road contracts, and the result is improvement in road condition mix. So the question is, did the intervention lead to the desired results? And this is the question that impact evaluation will try to assess or answer. Now, what are the potential impact evaluation questions? Usually, we want to find out what was the effect of the program on the outcome? How much better off are beneficiaries because of the program, project, or policy we have implemented? And how will outcomes be different if the program design change? And is the program cost effective? Now, you realize that the traditional monitoring and evaluation that we do will not be able to answer these questions, okay? It's not just about asking how many kilometers of roads were constructed, how many footbridges were installed, things like that. We can't answer those policy questions just using the traditional monitoring and evaluation. And that is why, we now move towards impact evaluation. So let me just give you a bit of background as to what the traditional monitoring evaluation entails. The traditional M&E tries to continuously collect data on our projects to compare how well a project, a program, or a policy is performing against expected results. Okay, and usually it's all about tracking output activities and not much focus is placed on the impact and whether the impact we are observing is a result of the intervention we have implemented. So this informs implementation and program improvements, but it does not actually deal with the high-level policy questions in terms of whether the intervention was effective or not, and whether it made a difference in the lives of the people. So, for example, government will be hoping that when we construct roads, it should lead to improvement in economic activities in areas along where the road has been constructed. So it's not just about counting how many kilometers of road has been constructed and so on. It's really about whether this long-term widespread improvement is visible, because those are the main objectives of the projects. All right, so impact evaluation entails an assessment of the causal effects of a project, a program, or policy on beneficiaries' outcomes. And here we try to estimate whether the changes we are observing can be attributed to the intervention. Let me give you an example. We have installed, let's say, a footbridge on the Medina Adenta Road. The expectation is that it will lead to reduction in pedestrian fatalities, or maybe improve on pedestrian safety. Now, for the next few years, we should be observing road accidents involving pedestrians on that road and find out whether there has been a decrease or an increase in pedestrian fatalities or pedestrian crashes involving pedestrians. Now, we must also go beyond just looking at the numbers, but finding out whether if there were reduction in fatalities, is it because of the footbridge or there were other interventions that we did not observe? So the issue about attribution is very, very important. If we construct a road to a community and we observe in subsequent years increase in maybe crop production, reduction in maybe post-harvest losses, that is a good observation. But the question is, will it have happened anyway, or it happened because of the road projects? So that is to say, can we attribute the reduction in post-harvest losses to the construction of the feeder road or the gravel road to that community? All right, so we need to be able to answer these questions, very, very important, and that is the basis for impact evaluation. The next thing is, why is impact evaluation valuable? We need evidence on what works. So usually government is implementing so many programs, and as you are aware, these programs are costing a lot of money. I mean, year of roads. If you take rough estimates, a kilometer of asphalt road will be about $1 million. Okay, so if you are talking about even 50 kilometers, this is really a lot of money. but our budget is limited. And there are competing needs for these scarce resources. We have health, education, sanitation. All these are demanding the scarce resources. So we have to be very sure that we are putting money in places that it makes a difference in the lives of the people. We are also aware that bad policies will hurt. Bad policies will hurt in the sense that if we spend millions and millions of dollars on policies which do not make a difference in the lives of the people, then it's also a great concern. I mean, if you take a footbridge, for example, let's take the Magina and Denta footbridge. It costs, we're told, roughly about 20 million Ghana cedis. If this is the case, then you realize that this is significant investment of public resources in such a project. So it has to make a difference. It has to achieve goals and results which, when valued, will be more than the 20 million investment that was made in the footbridge. Now, Henry Ford said that if you do things the same way you've always done them, you will get the same results you've always gotten. In order to change your results, you've got to do things differently. And so you can say that this is how we've always been doing it. Every year, we have a way of selecting sections of the network for periodic maintenance, for sport improvement, and so on. We need to start thinking differently, looking at approaches that will help us get better results. All right, so I think Henry Ford's statement is actually consistent with the reasons why we evaluate projects. Why do we evaluate? I'll try to summarize the reasons for evaluation under just 3 categories. Number one, it's about a strategy. We want to find out whether we are doing the right things. Okay, so if, for example, is the introduction of outputs and performance-based road contracts the right thing to do in terms of ensuring improved road condition all year round? What is the rationale behind that policy? What is the justification? Is there a clear theory of change for this strategy? Okay. Now, sometimes you may implement a project, the strategy may be perfect, but the problem is with the operations, the implementation. So the other thing we try to capture when we are evaluating a project is whether we are doing things in the right way. Okay, so you may be doing the right thing, but you may not be doing it in the right way. Now, under operations, we are interested in effectiveness in achieving expected outcomes. So let's assume that building the footbridge is the right thing to do, all right? But another question would be, is it efficient? Is in terms of optimizing resources? So if truly the bridge costs 20 million, could it have been cheaper? What method could we have used? What material could we have used to make it cheaper and yet still achieve the overall objective? We are also interested in client satisfaction. So are people happy in terms of where the bridge was sited? Could it have been different? Could we have engaged stakeholders a lot more? So these are operational issues, which if you get the chance to evaluate a project, you must also be interested in the efficiency and effectiveness of the implementation. Then the third aspect of evaluation is about the learning, okay? So we want to also find out whether there are better ways of doing things. You can't say this is how we've always been doing it. We have to look at alternatives, are there best practices, that we can adapt to achieve the same objective in a cheaper way, in a way that satisfies client expectations. I mean, if you go to some other countries, you realize instead of having overhead footbridges, they have, footbridges that are underpass. So it goes under the road rather than overhead. So these are all options that should be brought on the table Can we rather improve on traffic signaling, which can be cheaper and maybe more effective? Can we have better road enforcement by engaging with the police at those intersections so that we may not need a footbridge because people are still not using it for various reasons? So these are all issues that we need to discuss as part of our evaluation. Now, there are various methodologies. I don't want to bore you with those, but we have what we call randomized controlled trials. And we also have some quasi-experimental designs. Let's say, for instance, you construct a road with the objective of reducing youth unemployment. You can do what we call a randomized controlled trial, where you look at communities that receive road improvements and those that did not. And we try to compare whether those who got the road improvement and whether it led to improvement in the youth employment, for example, and whether those who did not have the road improvement, there was a reduction in youth unemployment. So we try to select the communities or beneficiaries randomly, and we conduct a field experiment to find out what the impact of our intervention has been. We have other methodologies which are quasi-experimental, and here we try to make use of administrative data, and where we implement a project and we try to find out what difference did the project make by comparing those who benefited from those who did not. So as researchers, and maybe these are thoughts for TREC at KNUST and other research institutions, we can start formulating research agenda which are based on some of these policy priorities, okay? So that we are guided by that. So for example, if you take the first one, the second program, the government has an interest in improving pedestrian safety. What is the effect of footbridges on reduction of pedestrian accidents? And I think if we can conduct such policy relevant research, it will really help governments to make decisions on some of these policy priorities. This is a year of road. We could ask ourselves, improving road condition, we know is a priority for governments. We could find out, for example, whether the implementation of various road improvement programs, did it lead to reduced vehicle transit time? Okay, so these are all research work that we really can, we can have research institutions working together with the ministry and its agencies to find answers to. All right, so